I'm here with Joe Graveen. And when did this project start with this whole Monoman collaboration?
Uh, Back in the initial, um, I guess the initial start date, I guess, would be in 2018, but the original conversation started in 2017, and in May of 2017, and so the University of Minnesota they were looking at hydrological type stuff, and so they reached out to. They wanted to work with the tribes primarily in Minnesota, and so we jumped on this call. When I say we, as in myself and Eric Chapman, and so we had a conference call with some of the Minnesota tribes, University of Minnesota people, and so. Yeah, we were definitely interested and so one of the things they wanted to the professors and what they call a PI, the people that were in charge of this project, they wanted to work with tribes and wanted to get some feedback on that. So, anyways, so what happened was is so there was already a lot of mistrust, working with
Yep.
with universities and all that. That's just because they've been, that's just the way Indian people are.
You're
You know what I mean? And so yeah, so anyway, so we had a few more calls, and then we finally, so they changed their whole mission and what kind of project they wanted to do. So they looking at hydrology and other aspects, around Monoman. And so what happened was is the they met with they came to the Gulfwood organization, Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission, at one of our WIC task force meetings, and they brought forward this project. And so one of the things that was brought up there was is that there's when we talk about Monoman, right? Monoman wild rice, and wild rice doesn't know no boundaries, whether it's in Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, Canada, wherever. It don't know no boundaries, and so they took that back to the University of Minnesota, with people that were actually funding this, what they call Grand Challenges program that they had there at University of Minnesota. They had some money for a project, so they took that back. What was brought out at White Task Force, that was brought up by members of Lac du Flambeau and the White Task Force rep and some of our rice chiefs and a couple other different tribes, and so they took that back to their people at the university level, and they agreed.
okay.
So that's kind of how this project took off, and so out of that, the work was already in the works, and so they created this. They created this what they call a white paper, and so it's called Responsible, Respectable Research, working with tribal partners. And so there was, so that's kind of where that came from, and then so out of that, part of that white paper, that whole responsible, respectable research protocols for research ended up becoming part of a MOU that University of Minnesota and the Lac Flambeau tribe signed the MOU, and that kind of set the stage, for a number of different things. That this whole project, this collaborative project, is all the research, the data collection is all tribally driven.
So it's all tribally driven.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so
tribally.
all of it's going to stay here with the data, and then also it can go back as well, right?
Yeah. It's just so like even some of the publications. So it's just like it's well rounded. It's like they ain't just gonna publish a piece of paper or an article on how they did their work without talking to their partners like Lac du Flambeau, or let's say Fond du Lac up in Minnesota. So we meet once a month, and so it's like or they even shoot us emails and ask, what do you guys think about this? Can we have this or can we that? No, we're gonna omnize this. Take that off there. We know we don't want to map that kind of thing. That's all up to us, and that was that was that was driven. That was kind of the main concerns that we had. When I say we, I mean as a tribe, our tribal governing body, some of our people in our natural resource department that been around for a while and have been dealing with how that data is shared without even consulting tribes.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like that was like kind of like the nuts and bolts of this whole thing. Is given that what can we share, what do we want to share, and so like I guess I'll use the word Indian country instead of maybe reservation. I'll just use Indian country. And like an Indian country, Black Washwagoning. There's a lot of different areas. Even the whole northern Wisconsin, all over. There's places that have cultural and spiritual significance to us.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, there's so those things. We they ask us about, especially on some particular areas that we've been working on here within Lac du Flambeau and around Monoman. So there's some areas that are pretty culturally significant, and we have some spiritual connections to that. And so it was like, no, it's just like you just don't even mention Raven Lake. Don't even mention Raven Lake. Just show the lake. A lake. There's a site 5. Within Lac du Flambeau.
Yeah.
Like so it's just like, well, it's this. So because the work that's being done on reservation or in Indian country, that's ours, right? That's our land base. Those are our waters. And if you want, you can come and talk to us. You're not going to go talk to people at university. The university people or the main authors of whatever. They're going to tell you to come and talk to us, or they can't share that. So, as even like if other people want to do, they want to use the work that we've, as a whole, as a collective, this collaboration, collective. They have to cite. They have to cite that work. They have to cite who the authors. Maybe there's a quote or something I put in one of them papers, one of those publications, they gotta cite me. They gotta cite my name or your name or a number of people that in whatever work they're doing. So it's giving that recognition to one way or another. If you're not gonna cite that, then how are you gonna use this? You're gonna recognize our tribal partner, our work that we've done with tribes. That's kind of what this is all about. It's just a lot of. It covers a lot. It's really comprehensive. I guess is the word I'm looking for, because not only talks about data sovereignty, not only talks about policy, not only talks about how we do research, and how we collect data. We're changing that whole narrative. And how do you work with tribes, or how do you work with other indigenous communities? Not only here in the United States, but anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
We're changing that. We're making an attempt to change that. And kind of the neat thing about that, this whole collaborative project is that it's opened many doors for not only Lac du Flambeau. It opened a lot of doors for students, that have graduated with their masters or their PhDs, and so now, the one, this is like, it's like planting that seed, for these new, the researchers or people that are going into forestry or plant ecology type stuff, that they're just planting that seed. So there's a new group of professionals coming out of this workshop, out of this collaborative that is that's going to, hopefully set the standard, going forward, and how we work and how they work with tribes,
Hmm.
you know.
And when I see this project, I could see that you really changed a lot, like groundbreaking stuff going forward with a lot of people. And
Yeah.
how did that feel when you when you were changing with how the government and the schools and they work with you? You know what I mean? How did that feel?
Well, there's mixed feelings, because I think very early on, we've been dealing with the norm, I guess, and how entities work or even consult with
Mm.
with tribes, and that's I mean that was like I know very early on, it's been really frustrating, and it's just like it's not going to work that way, and it's like this is this is this is what it is, this is what we know. We know Anishinaabe people know about wild rice. They know about Monoman, you know, and that knowledge we know, that's a science, just like Western science, you know. That's just and it's just not, it's we're given what our ancestors shared with us,
Mm.
and what we're sharing with, our younger people that are coming out of college, coming into this field, working around water, around Monoman, around forestry, different things like that. We're sharing that with them, and
Mm.
they're giving a different perspective that hey, it's just not. No, we can't just focus on forestry. We can't just focus on that, especially when it comes to wild rice or looking at you can't just focus on water invasive species like Eurasian water milfoil or purple loosestrife. Why is that happening? And it's just like we know, we have that information. We've always had that information. We have these different terminologies that Western science has. For like, we have words, and that's always been there. In time immemorials, and we before they even gave a dandelion a name.
Mm.
We had a name for that already. So it's just like.
And when working with the university, what was your biggest fears getting out of this project with them?
One of the biggest fears.
Yeah, biggest fears, and then
I think it wasn't really my biggest fear was is that they wouldn't honor, that they'd walk back on their word. They'd walk back they'd walk back on that white paper, that responsible, respectable research.
mm,
That was my biggest fear. So there was like, it took a while. To kind of let the guard down, and well, I had this much trust, way back there, or I had this much mistrust, and I had, that much trust, but over time that's changed, and so it's like they what's the word I want to use? They walk the talk, I guess,
yeah,
and,
yeah,
they went out of their way to learn about our community. They went out of their way to talk to our tribal members, whether they were part of this project or not, whether they are part of the forestry, whether the people who are part of wildlife, you know, they took time to talk and hear their stories, some of our elders, like we'll say Wayne Wolf, he's been around a lot of those conversations when they came here for site visits and stuff like that, and just hearing, just building that relationship, and that was important, and they you know, when things are when you're not familiar or you don't know, you get kind of anxiety,
Yeah.
and it's just like you just kind of get that fear and anxiety, and it's like, well, I don't know about this, and that's the thing, it's like here's an opportunity to learn something. There's an opportunity to change some barriers.
Mm.
You got a roadblock. Because you got this mentality that society has put on us that we're lesser. That what we know as Anishinaabe people, and knowledge that we know is supposed to be lesser than what society or like what academics are saying and what they're teaching. That whole society, that culture around that. Conquer and divide. And that's, we're changing that. We're attempting to change that narrative, and then I believe it is, because for the last 8 years, I can, we had to have, probably almost 2 dozen people graduate that were part of this collaborative project together. And now,
Well, that's amazing.
Up.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So 9, or how many graduated out of this project?
I can't even. Probably about a dozen or two
Oh my God.
that have been part of this project. They're in forestry management positions. There's 2 of them that are actually, they went on to be professors.
Mm.
Out in Oregon, or I think Oregon State University, and then the other one working out in New York, professor for Zuni, Syracuse University at New York. And so it's just like, it's pretty cool, It's just like having these people, hey, send me an email or call me, hey, you want to talk to her, you want to talk to my class, or hey, or what, hey, you want to help me co-present on this, at this ABU conference, or something like that. It's like, so yeah, it's just it's not only giving us opportunities, but it's giving them opportunities too. So that's kind of the neat thing about this whole project, and this is what we're doing here today is we're attempting to provide this information to our tribal members, and we invited some of our high school students over here to come and sit in, and what what's the future going forward? What does that look like as partners? How do we move this forward? So yeah, it's I'm no expert, when it comes to, I don't know very much, but
And when walking out of this project, what's the most biggest thing you felt like you accomplished out of this whole collaboration after all these years working on it?
I think the biggest accomplishment is that I think the biggest accomplishment is that it gave us more resources, it's built relationships with other tribal partners. We have this connection now, that we have, it's like that spider web, all these people that we're talking about that graduated, they're off working in these different places now, and it says, okay, well now we have a resource, we can reach out to them, or they can reach out to us, and
There's that trust.
and help continue this story, this collaborative project story of how you work with tribes, and that I think that's the biggest accomplishment that I see coming out of that. And then I think the other one is just the relationships that we built. It's been pretty awesome, meeting, it's just like meeting, having a communication with the University of Minnesota president, meeting, having those connections with the University of Minnesota deans, different departments, having those type of connections. And then I think the other accomplishment is that, that I think happened is that it's given us opportunities, and it's given other universities in the country to reach out, and say, hey, this is, we want to do this type of project, more just bringing that attention to Valrice, bringing that attention to Monoman, to how can we monitor that, what kind of, all that, just technology. Now today I can tell we have some really solid science data geared towards. We have a better understanding with that data of what needs to happen in protecting and restoring our Monoman, and that's through all these other partners that come with universities like Northwestern, Purdue, Georgia Tech, and having just different, just being really involved, and knowing that these universities want to work with us with the same respect and honor that traveling driven projects that we established through this collaborative.
Well, I'll say this is thank you for your time, Joe. Thank you for talking. And where are some of the places that they can actually come see you, and if they want to talk about this data and stuff like that, where could they reach out and see you?
Smoke signals.
Well, besides that, we know you're in.
No, you can. I used to be on Facebook, but I deleted that. You can reach me at Natural Flammable Travel Natural Resource Department. Let me see. You can reach also. My number is 715-588-4238. You can call my office and either that or you reach out to WLDF 92.9 torque. No bell, you'll steer you in the right direction.
I'll steer you right there.
No, I mean there's you can go on the you go on the Electro Flammable main webpage,
Okay.
And there's you have all that information on. You can get a hold of me too on there. So
All right.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.